The morning sky over New Haven was painted orange and purple, just like it had been every morning for the past 20 years. Dae-Sung stood on the observation deck of the colony's defense station, watching the twin suns rise over the fields where wheat and corn grew in neat rows. He had been stationed here for 3 years, and in all that time, nothing dangerous had ever happened. His job was mostly ceremonial, a military presence to make the colonists feel safe. Below him, the colony was waking up. 50,000 people lived in New Haven, spread across 3 main settlements and dozens of farms. They were ordinary people who had left Earth seeking a new life. There were teachers, doctors, farmers, engineers, and children who had never seen Earth except in pictures. Hana was probably already at her lab by now, studying the native plants that grew near the southern river. She had told him last week that she had discovered a new species of flowering vine. She was excited about it. Jin-Woo would be getting ready for school. The boy was 15 and obsessed with becoming a pilot. He spent every free moment at the small airfield, pestering the shuttle pilots to let him sit in the cockpits. Dae-Sung had promised to give him a tour of the defense station next week. The boy's eyes had lit up like stars when he heard that. Everything was normal. Everything was peaceful. That was why Dae-Sung almost ignored the alarm when it first sounded. Probably another drill, he thought. But then his screen lit up with red warnings. Ships had just appeared in orbit. Big ships. Military ships. Veltran ships. His hands moved automatically, trained by years of military service. He activated the defense systems, powered up the shields, and sent out a general alert to the colony. But even as he worked, a cold feeling settled in his stomach. New Haven had maybe 15 defense guns. The Veltran fleet in orbit had 30 warships. This was not a fair fight. This was not a fight they could win. He opened a channel to the Veltran fleet commander. "This is Commander Dae-Sung of the human colony New Haven. You are in violation of our territorial space. Please state your intentions." The response came quickly. A Veltran face appeared on his screen, scaled and reptilian, with cold yellow eyes. "Your colony will be destroyed. No survivors." Dae-Sung felt his blood turn to ice. "We are a civilian colony. We have no military weapons beyond basic defense. We pose no threat to you. Please, we can negotiate." The screen went black. A moment later, the first orbital strike hit the northern settlement. Dae-Sung watched on his monitors as buildings exploded, as streets turned into fire, as people ran screaming in every direction. He had maybe 5 minutes before the Veltrans targeted his station. He grabbed the communication console and began recording. "This is Commander Dae-Sung of New Haven to any human ship that receives this message. We are under attack by Veltran forces. They refused all contact. They refused all surrender. This is not a battle. This is murder. They are targeting civilians. They are targeting children. To Earth Command, tell them what happened here. Tell them that we followed every rule, every law, every treaty. Tell them it did not matter. Tell them." The station shook violently. They had hit the main power generator. Dae-Sung kept talking, kept recording, even as the walls began to crack around him. "Tell them we died as humans. Tell them to make this mean something. Tell them." The second strike hit the communication array. The transmission cut off. Dae-Sung was thrown against the wall as the station began to tear apart. He had time for one last thought before the ceiling collapsed on him. He hoped someone had heard his message. Jin-Woo was running. He did not know where his parents were. He did not know where his sister was. He only knew that the sky was full of fire and the streets were full of screaming. He had been walking to school when the sirens started. Then the first explosion came, so loud it knocked him down. When he got up, half the building across the street was gone. He could see into someone's bedroom. There was a stuffed animal on a bed that was now hanging in empty air. People were running everywhere, trying to get to the shelters. But the orbital strikes kept coming, targeting the evacuation routes, targeting the shelter entrances. Jin Woo saw a shuttle try to take off from the airfield. He watched as a beam of energy came down from the sky and cut it in half. The pieces fell back to the ground in flames. He ran without thinking, his legs moving on pure instinct. He found himself at the irrigation control station near the edge of the colony. The door was open. He ran inside and down the metal stairs into the underground tunnel network. The tunnels carried water to the farms. They were narrow and dark and went on for kilometers. He kept running until his lungs burned, until he could not hear the explosions anymore. Then he collapsed against the cold concrete wall and cried. He stayed in those tunnels for 3 days. He could hear the bombardment continue overhead, could feel the vibrations through the walls. Sometimes he heard voices, people calling for help. But he was too afraid to move, too afraid to go back up. He drank water from the irrigation pipes and tried not to think about what was happening above him. On the 4th day, the vibrations stopped. Everything became quiet. Jin Woo waited another full day before he finally climbed back to the surface. What he found there would stay with him forever. The colony was gone. The buildings were rubble. The fields were burned. Bodies lay in the streets where they had fallen. He walked through the ruins in a daze, calling out names, but no one answered. The Veltrans had been thorough. They had destroyed everything. He was found 2 days later by a human rescue ship. They told him he was one of only 200 survivors out of 50,000. They told him he was lucky. But Jin Woo did not feel lucky. He felt empty. He felt broken. And deep inside, beneath the grief and the horror, he felt something else beginning to grow. Something cold and hard and angry. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity could feel that way too. 6 months had passed since New Haven burned. Jin Woo stood in the Galactic Council chambers, his hands shaking as he prepared to speak. Around him sat representatives from 40 different alien species, each one more interested in their data pads than in the human boy standing before them. He had been asked to testify about what happened, to tell them what he saw, to make them understand. He spoke for 20 minutes. He described the sound of the orbital strikes, the smell of burning buildings, the sight of his neighbors lying dead in the streets. He told them about the 3 days in the tunnel, about the silence that came after, about finding his home reduced to ash and bones. When he finished, the chamber was quiet for exactly 10 seconds. Then the Galactic Council chairman, a tall being with too many arms, thanked him for his testimony and moved on to the next agenda item. That was it. 20 minutes of the worst experience in his life, reduced to a footnote. The council spent more time discussing trade regulations for mineral exports than they did discussing the murder of 50,000 humans. Ambassador Mi-sun sat in the diplomatic gallery, watching the proceedings with growing disgust. She had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 8 years. She believed in diplomacy, in peaceful resolution, in the power of negotiation. She had convinced Earth to follow every rule, every protocol, every ridiculous tradition the Council demanded. And for what? So they could express their deep concern and move on? The Veltran representative did not even pretend to be sorry. He claimed that New Haven had violated territorial boundaries, a lie that anyone could disprove by checking the navigation records. But the Council did not want to check. They did not want to investigate. They wanted this problem to go away, so they could return to their comfortable lives. The final decision was announced 3 days later. Economic sanctions against the Veltran Empire. A strongly worded condemnation. A request for reparations. Nothing with teeth. Nothing that mattered. The Veltrans would lose some trade privileges and pay a fine. That was the price for murdering 50,000 people. Mi-sun felt sick that she was not the only one. Back on Earth, Admiral Tae-min read the Council's decision and threw his datapad across the room. He had known this would happen. He had warned the politicians, had told them the galaxy did not care about justice, only stability. They had not listened. They had trusted the system that well. The system had failed. And Tae-min had not been sitting idle for 6 months. While the diplomats talked and the council delayed, he had been moving ships, stockpiling weapons, running combat simulations. Earth's military was not large compared to the old galactic powers, but it was modern, well-trained, and angry. Very angry. He had also been sending special operations teams into Veltran space. Captain Hyan led one of those teams, operating in deep cover, gathering intelligence on Veltran military installations, fleet movements, supply lines. The mission was technically illegal under galactic law. Tae-min did not care anymore that the breaking point came 4 months after the Council's useless decision. Horizon Station was a mining outpost in human space, home to 3,000 workers and their families. It was smaller than New Haven, but just as peaceful, just as innocent. The Veltrans attacked it on a Tuesday morning. This time, the attack was broadcast live. Automated mining cameras captured everything. The galaxy watched as Veltran warships bombarded the station, as escape pods were targeted and destroyed, as miners tried desperately to defend themselves with industrial equipment. It lasted 57 minutes. When it was over, 3,000 more humans were dead. Not a single survivor. The footage spread across the galaxy in hours. Species that had ignored New Haven could not ignore this. The brutality was undeniable, the intent clear. And still, the Galactic Council called for an emergency session to discuss appropriate responses. More talking. More delays. More nothing. Mi-sun had had enough. She stood before the council one last time, her voice cold and clear. I came to you 6 months ago asking for justice. You gave me paperwork. I came to you with testimony from a child who watched his world die. You thanked him and moved on. Now 3,000 more of my people are dead, and you want to form another committee. She looked at each council member in turn. You are not interested in justice. You are interested in convenience. You allow genocide because stopping it would be difficult, would require sacrifice, would disturb your comfortable system. Well, I am done being part of that system. I am done watching my people die while you debate proper procedure. She pulled her ambassador's badge from her uniform and placed it on the podium. I resign. And I say this to every species in this chamber. If you will not stop the killing, we will. Humanity followed your rules. We played by your system. We trusted your justice. Never again. The speech was broadcast across all human colonies and back to Earth. The response was immediate. Protests erupted demanding military action. Politicians who had preached patience found themselves shouted down. The public mood had shifted from hope to rage. Earth's government issued a formal ultimatum to the Veltran Empire. 30 days to surrender all individuals involved in both massacres for trial. Failure to comply would result in military action. The statement was simple, clear, and deadly serious. The Veltran Emperor's response was broadcast across the galaxy. He appeared on screen, his scaled face twisted in amusement, and he laughed. Actually laughed. The humans think they can threaten us? Let them come. We will exterminate every last one of them. They are a pest species that needs to be eliminated. We should have started with their homeworld. That laugh would become famous. It would be played in classrooms for generations. A reminder of the moment when humanity's patience finally ended. Because 48 hours after that broadcast, Earth's military began the largest mobilization in human history. The Galactic Council sent an urgent message to Earth. Military action would result in humanity's expulsion from the Council. There would be sanctions, isolation, consequences. Earth's response was delivered by the new acting ambassador, a former military officer named Kung Su. His statement was 3 words long: "We don't care." Ships began moving. Fleets that had been scattered across human space converged on staging areas. Weapons factories went to full production. Reserve units were activated. And deep in Veltran space, Captain Hyan and his teams prepared to do what they had been training for. Jin-Wu, who had spent 6 months in therapy trying to process his trauma, walked into a military recruitment office and enlisted. He was 16, technically too young. The recruiter looked at his file, saw New Haven listed as his home, and approved him anyway. Jin-Wu was going to become a pilot after all, just not the peaceful kind he had once dreamed about. The galaxy watched nervously as humanity prepared for war. Some species approved, others condemned. Most just waited to see what would happen. They had seen humanity be peaceful, be diplomatic, be civilized. They were about to see something different. They were about to learn that humans had not been weak. They had been restrained, and that restraint was now gone. Admiral Tae-min stood on the bridge of the ECS Indomitable, watching the tactical display show 73 human warships in formation around him. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. Against the Veltran Empire's 300 combat vessels, it should have been suicide. But Tae-min was not planning to fight fair. The Veltrans expected a traditional battle. Fleet against fleet, ship against ship, the kind of honorable combat that galactic civilizations had practiced for thousands of years. They were wrong. Humanity had studied war for its entire history, and humans knew that honor got you killed. Victory kept you alive. Captain Hyan's voice came through on the encrypted channel. All teams in position, sir. We are ready. Tae-min nodded. Execute Operation Backbreaker. Across 12 Veltran systems, 50 human special operations teams struck simultaneously. They hit the shipyards where Veltran warships were built. They destroyed the fuel refineries that powered their fleets. They sabotaged the supply depots that fed their military. And they did it all at the same moment, coordinated to the second. The Veltran military scrambled to respond, trying to protect everything at once, spreading their forces thin. That was exactly what Tae-min wanted. While they rushed to defend their infrastructure, the human fleet hit their scattered patrols. Not in grand battles, but in quick, brutal ambushes. Jump in, destroy the target, jump out. Never stay long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Colonel Ji-hoon led the ground assault on the orbital station above Veltros. Minor. His Marines breached the station in 15 places at once, moving through the corridors like a tidal wave. The Veltran defenders fought hard, but they were not prepared for human close combat tactics. Ji-hoon's forces had trained in urban warfare, boarding actions, and hand-to-hand combat. The station fell in 6 hours. In space, Lieutenant Yuna became a legend. Her fighter squadron used tactics that made the Veltran pilots furious. She would bait them into chasing her, lead them past hidden minefields, or straight into the firing solution of a waiting destroyer. Her squadron painted 34 kills on their fighters in the first week. The Veltrans started calling her the Ghost because she seemed to appear from nowhere. Dr. Minho's weapons research finally paid off. He had spent 3 years developing autonomous attack drones, small, cheap, expendable. Each one was barely larger than a fighter, packed with explosives and a basic AI. The Veltrans had shields that could stop missiles and energy weapons. They were not designed to stop 300 small objects swarming them at once. The drones cost almost nothing to build. Veltran warships cost fortunes. The math was brutal, but the real genius of the human strategy was not in the tactics. It was in the target selection. Tae Min was not trying to destroy the Veltran military. He was trying to collapse their entire war machine. No fuel meant ships could not move. No shipyards meant destroyed ships could not be replaced. No supply lines meant armies could not be fed. Tae Min was waging total war, and the Veltrans were not prepared for it. 3 weeks into the campaign, the Veltran High Command ordered their scattered fleets to concentrate at their homeworld, Veltros Prime. They would make their stand there, force the humans into a direct confrontation where numbers would matter. Every remaining Veltran warship was recalled. It was the largest fleet they had ever assembled. 197 ships defending their most important world. The human fleet arrived 6 days later. Tae Min looked at the defensive formation and smiled. It was impressive, intimidating, exactly what military doctrine said should happen. And it was also a trap they had built for themselves. He opened a channel to the Veltran fleet commander. "This is Admiral Tae Min of the human fleet. I am here to give you one chance. Surrender those responsible for the massacres at New Haven and Horizon Station. Do this and we will withdraw." The Veltran commander's response was predictable. "Your pathetic fleet will be destroyed. You cannot win this fight." Tae Min cut the channel. "All ships, execute Plan Delta." The human fleet did not attack the Veltran defensive formation. Instead, they spread out around the planet and began systematically destroying everything in orbit. Communications satellites, observation platforms, trade stations, scientific outposts. Anything that was not actively shooting at them was destroyed. The Veltran fleet rushed to intercept, breaking their defensive formation. That was when the ambush sprang. Human ships that had been hiding in the asteroid belt nearby jumped in behind the Veltran fleet. Caught between two forces, the Veltrans fought desperately. They were brave. They were skilled. But bravery and skill could not overcome bad positioning and surprise. The battle lasted 9 hours. When it ended, the Veltran defense fleet was reduced to 47 damaged ships that retreated to the planet's surface. The human fleet had lost 18 ships. Tae Min mourned each one, but he knew the price had been necessary. He broadcast a message to the planet below. "People of Veltros Prime, your military committed genocide against human civilians. Your emperor laughed at our pain. Your government thought us weak because we followed rules. You were wrong. We were not weak. We were being merciful. But mercy has limits." The planet's surface erupted in defensive fire. Orbital defense platforms, ground-based lasers, missile batteries. Tae Min let them shoot. They could not reach his ships, positioned just outside their range. And with their fleet destroyed, they could not force him to leave. "You killed 53,000 of our people. You targeted children. You targeted the helpless. You did this without mercy, without hesitation, without regret. Now you will learn what it means to face an enemy who remembers." He did not bombard the planet. That would have been what the Veltrans did to New Haven. Instead, he established a total blockade. Nothing in, nothing out. No ships, no trade. No communication with the rest of their empire. Your government has 30 days to surrender the war criminals. If they do not, the blockade continues. Your economy will collapse. Your people will suffer. And every day that passes, we will dismantle another piece of your empire. It was a brutal strategy. The Veltran people had not directly committed the massacres, but they had supported a government that did. They had cheered when humanity was attacked. They had believed their propaganda about human weakness. Now they would pay the price for their leaders' choices. The Galactic Council sent urgent messages demanding humanity cease their campaign. Multiple species threatened to intervene. Tae Min's response was broadcast across the galaxy, and it changed everything. The Galactic Council had 6 months to deliver justice after New Haven. They did nothing. They had another 4 months after Horizon Station. They did nothing. They chose comfort over conscience, stability over justice. We trusted your system, and 53,000 humans died because of it. He paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. We will not make that mistake again. We will not wait for committees and debates while our people are murdered. If you believe our actions are wrong, then you should have acted when we asked for justice peacefully. You did not. So now we enforce justice ourselves. The message was clear. Humanity would no longer play by rules that allowed genocide. They would no longer trust a system that valued peace over justice. They had learned that in the galaxy, strength was the only language that mattered, and they were strong enough to speak it fluently. Within weeks, the Veltran war machine collapsed. Their colonies, cut off from support, began surrendering. Species they had subjugated saw their chance and rebelled. The Veltran Empire, which had dominated their region of space for centuries, fell apart in less than 2 months, all because they had made one mistake. They had confused human restraint with human weakness. They had seen civilization as cowardice. They had learned too late that the most dangerous enemy is not the one who is always violent. It is the one who chooses peace until peace becomes impossible. Major Yunji walked through the streets of what used to be the Veltran Empire's third largest city. 3 months ago, this place had been full of life, full of people who believed their empire was invincible. Now it was occupied by human forces, and the Veltrans walked with their heads down, their eyes full of anger and shame. She understood that feeling. She had felt something similar after New Haven, but understanding did not make her job easier. Her orders were clear. Maintain order. Protect civilians. Hunt down war criminals. Simple words that meant complicated, messy work. The Veltran people were not a unified group. Some wanted peace and accepted that their government had done terrible things. Others saw humans as invaders and attacked occupation forces whenever they could. Most just wanted to survive and did not care about politics anymore. Yesterday, a Veltran civilian had thrown a homemade bomb at one of her patrols. The bomb had killed 2 human soldiers. Her troops had chased down the bomber and arrested him. He was 19 years old, barely older than Jinwoo. When they searched his home, they found propaganda posters showing humans as monsters. He truly believed he was fighting evil invaders. Yunji had to decide what to do with him. Military law said he was a combatant who killed soldiers. But he was also a kid who had been fed lies his whole life. She sent him to trial, where he would face human justice. Fair, legal, by the book. It felt right and wrong at the same time. Specialist Sang-woo had the worst job in the occupation. He was part of the war crimes investigation team, documenting everything the Veltrans had done. Not just New Haven and Horizon Station, but everything. His team had found mass graves on 3 Veltran colony worlds. Torture facilities where prisoners had been experimented on. Evidence of systematic abuse going back decades. The Veltrans had not just attacked humans. They had done this to multiple species, anyone they considered weak or inferior. New Haven was not an exception. It was standard practice. The only difference was that humans had the power to fight back. Sang-woo spent his days interviewing survivors, collecting evidence, building cases. He spent his nights having nightmares about what he had seen. Bodies of children, some human, some alien. People who had been tortured for days before being killed. Evidence of suffering that served no military purpose, done purely for cruelty. He understood why some human soldiers wanted collective punishment. When you saw what the Veltrans had done, when you documented it in detail, it was hard not to hate them all. But Sang-woo held on to one thought. Not every Veltran had done these things. Most had just been ordinary people living under a cruel government. Punishing them would make humans no better than the Veltrans. Jing Wu flew patrol missions over Veltran cities almost every day. He was 17 now, officially too young for combat, but nobody questioned the survivors of New Haven. He was a good pilot, quick and precise. His instructors said he had natural talent. But Jing Wu knew the truth. He was good because he was angry, and anger made him focused. From his cockpit, he could see Veltran families in the streets below. Parents holding children's hands. Kids playing in parks. Normal life continuing despite the occupation. Part of him wondered if the Veltrans had looked down at New Haven the same way before they attacked. Had they seen human children playing? Had they cared? His gunner, an older soldier named Daehyun, often talked to him during long patrols. You thinking about revenge again? Jin Woo did not answer at first. Then, quietly, every day. That feeling ever go away? No. Does it for you? Daehyun had lost his sister at Horizon Station. No, but I've learned to aim it better. Being angry at every Veltran is easy. Being angry at the ones who actually did it, that takes work. Jin Woo thought about that a lot. It was easier to hate them all, to see every Veltran as guilty. But he had seen the evidence Sang Woo's team collected. Most Veltrans had not known about the torture facilities, the mass graves. Their government had hidden it from them, just like governments everywhere hid uncomfortable truths. The Galactic Council was in chaos. Multiple species that had remained neutral during the war now condemned humanity. Some called for sanctions. Some suggested a coalition to contain human aggression. The hypocrisy was stunning. Where had they been when humans were being slaughtered? Where was their outrage then? Ambassador Mason, who had returned to diplomatic work after the war, addressed the council one more time. You are afraid. I can see it in your faces, in your words. You are afraid because humanity proved something you did not want to believe. We proved that your system is broken. That justice without power is meaningless. That rules without enforcement are just suggestions. She looked at each species representative. You allowed genocide because stopping it was inconvenient. You preached peace while innocent people died. And now you condemn us for refusing to die quietly. You want us to return to being victims, to trust a system that failed us. That will never happen. Earth announced it was withdrawing from the Galactic Council entirely. Several other species, ones that had suffered under aggressive neighbors with no consequences, immediately followed. They formed a new coalition called the Free Species Alliance. It was smaller than the Council, but it had one simple rule. Genocide would not be tolerated, and members would act to stop it. The Council members watched nervously as their authority crumbled. For centuries, they had maintained order through careful diplomacy and avoiding conflict. Now a new power had emerged that believed in justice first, peace second. It terrified them. Back in occupied Veltran space, the hunt for war criminals continued. One by one, the officers who had commanded the attacks on New Haven and Horizon Station were captured. Some surrendered. Some tried to fight. Some tried to hide among civilian populations. It did not matter. Sang Woo's team had records, had video, had evidence. They knew exactly who they were looking for, but the biggest target remained free. The Veltran Emperor had gone into hiding, protected by loyalists who still believed in his vision. Intelligence suggested he was somewhere in the outer colonies, moving between safe houses. Captain Hyan had been hunting him for weeks with no success. Then they caught a break. A Veltran civilian, a mother whose son had died in the human assault on Veltros Prime, came forward with information. She had lost her child because of the Emperor's war. She wanted him to face justice. She told them where he was hiding. Hyan's team hit the location at dawn. It was a small compound on an asteroid base, defended by elite guards. The fight was brief and brutal. When it ended, the Emperor was in custody, and Haiyan had lost 3 soldiers. They were the last combat deaths of the war. The Emperor was transported to Earth in chains. He expected to be executed immediately, a quick death to make humans feel better. Instead, he was placed in a cell to await trial. He would face the same justice system as every other war criminal. Fair trial, legal representation, rules of evidence, all the things he had never given his victims. The galaxy watched and waited. Some species hoped humanity would execute the Emperor immediately, proving they were as barbaric as feared. Others hoped for mercy, for humanity to show they were better than the Veltrans. What they got was something more frightening. They got human justice. Cold, methodical, and absolutely certain. The message was clear. Humanity would not become monsters to fight monsters. But they would also never again trust others to deliver justice for them. They had learned that in the galaxy, you could be civilized or you could be safe. Humans had decided to be both on their own terms. The occupation continued, messy and difficult and necessary. Yunji kept enforcing the law. Sang-Woo kept documenting crimes. Jin-Woo kept flying patrols, wrestling with his anger. And slowly, painfully, the work of justice moved forward. Not revenge. Not mercy. Justice. The trial chamber on Earth was built specifically for this moment. Large enough to hold thousands of observers. Equipped with translation systems for every known language. Broadcast live across the entire galaxy. Jin-Woo sat in the witness section, his uniform pressed and perfect, his hands shaking despite his best efforts. Today he would testify. Today he would face the people who destroyed his world. The first trials had been for lower-ranking officers, ship captains and commanders who carried out the attacks. Each one received a fair trial, something that surprised the galaxy. Humans appointed defense attorneys for the accused. Evidence was examined carefully. Witnesses were cross-examined. It was slow, methodical, and completely transparent. Some Veltrans were found guilty. A few were acquitted when evidence was insufficient. The process was exactly what it should be. But this trial was different. This was for the Veltran Emperor himself, and for the High Command who planned the genocides. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Sang-Woo's investigation team had spent months building an airtight case. Communication records, command orders, video evidence, testimony from hundreds of witnesses. There was no doubt about what happened. The question was only what justice looked like. Ambassador Mi-sun had returned one last time, not as a diplomat, but as the chief prosecutor. She stood before the court in a simple black suit, carrying a datapad with thousands of pages of evidence. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. The accused stand charged with crimes against sapient life, specifically the planned and deliberate genocide of human civilians at New Haven Colony and Horizon Station. These were not military targets. These were not accidents of war. These were innocent people, murdered systematically and intentionally. She activated the holographic display. Images appeared, horrible images that made people in the gallery look away. Bodies in the streets of New Haven, the wreckage of Horizon Station, children who would never grow up. 53,000 people, gone, erased, murdered because the accused viewed humanity as inferior, as weak as acceptable targets. The defense attorney, a human named Tae-young appointed by the court, stood. The defense does not dispute that these events occurred. However, we must examine the context. The Veltran Empire operates under different cultural standards. What humans see as murder, they saw as legitimate military action against a territorial threat. Mi-sun's response was sharp. Cultural relativism does not excuse genocide. Murder is murder, regardless of what species commits it. The accused knew they were killing civilians. They targeted evacuation ships. They hunted survivors. This was not war. This was extermination. The trial continued for weeks. Expert witnesses testified about military law. Survivors told their stories. Evidence was presented piece by piece, building an undeniable picture of deliberate atrocity. And through it all, the Veltran Emperor sat silent, his scaled face showing no emotion. Then came Jin Wu's turn. He walked to the witness stand, 20 years old now, but still carrying the trauma of a 15-year-old boy who watched his world burn. He was sworn in, asked to tell his story, and for the first time in 5 years, he spoke about it publicly. I was walking to school when the siren started. I did not know what was happening at first. Then I saw the sky catch fire. Buildings just ... exploded. People were running everywhere, screaming, trying to get to shelters. But the Veltrans kept targeting them. They hit the evacuation routes. They destroyed the shuttles trying to escape. His voice cracked slightly, but he continued. I ran to the irrigation tunnels and hid. I stayed there for 3 days, listening to the bombardment. I could hear people calling for help. I could hear the explosions. I was too scared to move. When I finally came out, everyone was gone. My family, my friends, everyone. The colony was just ... empty. He looked directly at the Veltran Emperor. I want to know why. Why did you do this? We were just people trying to live. We had no weapons. We were no threat to you. Why did you kill us? The chamber fell silent. The Emperor stared back at Jin Wu for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he spoke. Because we could. Because your species was new and weak. Because the Galactic Council would do nothing to stop us. We saw an opportunity to expand, and we took it. That is how power works. The honesty was more damning than any lie could have been. Mi-sun used it in her closing argument. The defense claims cultural differences. The accused himself admits the truth. This was about power, about cruelty, about the belief that might makes right. That is precisely why we are here. To prove that might does not make right. That justice matters more than power. The verdict took 6 hours of deliberation. The judges, all human, but following established galactic legal principles, found the Emperor and his high command guilty on all charges. The sentence was life imprisonment without possibility of release. Not execution, not torture. Simply removal from society, permanently. Some humans were angry at that. They wanted blood. They wanted the Veltrans to suffer as their victims had suffered. But Mi-sun addressed those concerns in a public statement. We could execute them. We could torture them. We could do to them what they did to us. But that would make us like them. Justice is not about revenge. It is about proving that we are better than the worst things done to us. The Emperor was led away to a maximum security facility where he would spend the rest of his life. As he passed Jin Wu, he spoke quietly. Your people have made many enemies with this war. Other species will fear you now. Jin Wu met his eyes. Good. Let them fear what happens when they commit genocide. Let them fear that there is finally someone who will stand up for the innocent. 10 years passed. The galaxy changed in ways nobody had predicted. The Galactic Council still existed, but its power was greatly reduced. The Free Species Alliance had grown to include 40 member species, all committed to preventing genocide and protecting the weak. It was smaller than the Council, but more respected, because it actually enforced its principles. The Veltran people rebuilt under a new democratic government. It had not been easy. The first years were full of protests, resentment, and violence. But slowly, a new generation emerged who rejected their parents' imperialism. They taught their children about the genocides, about the cost of believing in supremacy. Some Veltrans even joined the Free Species Alliance, working alongside humans to prevent future atrocities. Chin-Woo was a captain now, training new pilots at the academy. He still had nightmares about New Haven, probably always would. But he had found purpose in teaching others, in preparing humanity to defend itself. Once a year, he visited the New Haven Memorial, a massive wall where 50,000 names were carved in stone. He would stand there for hours, remembering Hana had survived. She had been at a research station far from the main colonies during the attack. She continued her xenobiology work, now joined by scientists from multiple species. Her lab had become a symbol of cooperation, proving that species could work together peacefully. She occasionally met with Veltran scientists who wanted to bridge the gap between their peoples. The work was hard, but she believed in it. Admiral Taemin had retired after the war, but he frequently gave lectures on military ethics and strategy. His most famous quote appeared in textbooks across the galaxy: "We did not stop being civilized. We redefined what civilized means." Being civilized does not mean accepting injustice. It means responding to injustice with purpose, precision, and Principal Major Yoon-ji commanded a peacekeeping force now, helping other species deal with their own conflicts. The lessons learned from the Veltran occupation proved valuable. How to maintain order without becoming oppressors. How to pursue justice without revenge. How to help a defeated people rebuild without destroying them. Sang-woo led the War Crimes Documentation Center, an organization dedicated to investigating and preventing genocide across the galaxy. His work had helped bring over 300 war criminals to trial. Some human, some alien. Justice was blind to species. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still injustice, still suffering. But there was a difference now. Species knew that genocide would not be ignored, that the powerful could not simply murder the weak without consequences, that humanity would stand against atrocity, even when it was difficult, even when it made enemies one day. Intelligence intercepted a transmission from a distant species considering attacking a human colony. Their military analyst's report was brief. Human assessment complete. Military capability. Extreme. Combat tactics. Ruthless but disciplined. Post-conflict behavior. Fair but uncompromising. Recommendation: avoid all hostile contact. These beings fight like demons but judge like saints. They cannot be intimidated, cannot be bought, and will not forgive genocide. Suggest diplomatic contact. Only the transmission was filed at Earth Command. No response was necessary. The message was already clear. Humanity had learned the most important lesson of galactic politics. Peace is only possible when potential aggressors fear the cost of war. Justice only matters when someone is strong enough to enforce it. Humans had become that someone. Not through cruelty or conquest, but through the simple refusal to let evil go unanswered. They had shown the galaxy that you could be strong and moral, that you could wage war effectively while maintaining your principles, that you could be both civilized and dangerous.